The presence of the Boots void, whose diameter of nothingness spans 330 million light-years, is very problematic to the current Big Bang theory as told by the Lambda CDM model. According to the assumptions that the early universe was mostly homogeneous and isotropic, this supervoid should not exist. It should contain between 2,000 to 10,000 galaxies, as opposed to the 60 galaxies that have so far been identified. Add to this that these 60 galaxies are not homogeneously distributed throughout the volume of the void, as would be expected. Rather, they are confined to a tube-shaped region running through the middle of the void. Applying the definition of sufficiently large of the cosmological principle of about 250 or 330 million light-years, looking at this volume of the universe that is sufficiently large enough but does not look the same as all the rest. In fact, it is a big empty supervoid of nothingness. So how, according to the standard model of cosmology, can the presence of this supervoid be explained? The surprise discovery in 1998 that the expansion of the universe was not slowing down, but rather accelerating, was a shock to cosmologists. It meant that there was some force acting or running counter to the force of gravity. In order to explain this mysterious force, the phrase dark energy was coined. Like dark matter, dark energy was an invisible component that we could not see directly, but whose influence we could measure. Unlike dark matter, which has the effect of gravitational attraction, dark energy has the counter effect of gravitational repulsion. Galaxies that were initially homogeneously spread throughout the early cosmos have over time, under the influence of gravity upon each other, grouped together. These groups grew to become clusters and then superclusters of galaxies. The same idea applied to voids merging together to finally become supervoids was thus postulated. Voids, whose volume is filled with dark energy, are attracted to each other. Acting and behaving like soap bubbles, merging together, voids, drawn towards each other, merged together, forming larger and larger voids. Thus, the Boötes void was formed over time in a manner similar to the merging of soap bubbles into a singular bubble. The 60-odd galaxies that were caught between the merging bubbles of the void were herded like cattle into being confined inside a tube-shaped region running through the middle of the void. This, I think, is a very fair and reasonable explanation as to why the Boötes void exists. It sounds to my ears a good explanation, and if I weren't trying to give an alternative and simpler explanation as to why the Boötes void exists, then I would accept this. There are a lot of cosmologists, on the other hand, who don't accept this explanation, because in looking at the details, the length of time it would have taken for such a large supervoid to have formed was far longer than the age of the universe. Simply put, the universe is not old enough for such a large supervoid to have already formed. But the real elephant in the room is not the Boötes void when taking the age of the universe into account. The real elephant in the room is the Eridanus supervoid, measuring around 1,000 million light-years in diameter. Also known as a cold dark spot on the microwave background sky, the Eridanus supervoid existed 300,000 years after the Big Bang event. If supervoids take time to evolve, and cosmologists argue that the universe is too young for the Boötes void to have formed, then how did the Eridanus supervoid come into existence? For me, it is the empty volume of space between the end of the jet and the collapsed core of the undefined starlike object that went nova. Simples. Some cosmologists, who with all due respect have based their life's work on the homogeneous and isotropic cosmological principle, are so desperate in order to explain the Boötes void that they have turned to a higher power in order to explain its existence. No, not God. Aliens! Yes, the explanation for its existence is because of aliens. You always know when a scientific theory is in trouble when in order to explain it, you have to call upon a higher power. In this case, it's aliens. The Kardashev scale is a method of measuring a civilization's level of technological advancement based on the amount of energy a civilization is able to use. Proposed by Soviet astronomer Nikolai Kardashev in 1964, he proposed 3 designated categories. A civilization whose energy production capability is equal to 10 to the power of 16 watts is the first of the 3 designated categories. Namely, a Type 1 or planetary civilization can use and store all the energy which reaches the host planet from its native sun. Moving up the scale, a Type 2 civilization, called a stellar civilization, could harness the total energy output of a star equal to around 10 to the power of 26 watts. One hypothetical concept for forming all the energy from a star is the Dyson sphere. A Dyson sphere is a device which would encompass the entire star in order to harvest its total energy. A star surrounded by a Dyson sphere would thus not emit any light into interstellar space, and hence we will not be able to see that star from here on Earth. A Type 3 civilization, or a galactic civilization, can control energy on the scale of its entire host galaxy. So instead of just harvesting all the energy from one star, a Type 3 civilization can farm the energy of all the stars in a galaxy, consuming 10 to the power of 36 watts. That's a Dyson sphere around 100 billion stars in a given galaxy. We humans don't even rate as being a Type 1 civilization yet. Popularized by scientists like Carl Sagan, this classification has since been extended to define Type 4 and Type 5 civilizations. A Type 4 civilization has an energy production capability of 10 to the power of 46 watts. This is something akin to a civilization that could tap into the very power of the universe. They are the Qs of Star Trek or the archangels of God. Type 5 would be to us God, capable of manipulating the universe and beyond, a Time Lord without measure. So why is all this relevant? Well, for one, I wish to show the desperation of some cosmologists in trying to explain the presence of the Boötes void by a hypothetical Type 4 civilization. The explanation being that the volumes of the Boötes void is full of galaxies, and it's just that all their stars are covered in Dyson spheres. Some sort of super AI replicating intelligence is exponentially building spheres around the suns of all the galaxies in the Boötes void. I like this idea as it's completely mad, but not very authentically original. I mean, building the same sphere over and over again billions of times is it just lacks any creative thought, and this from a super intelligent advanced civilization. It doesn't scan. If I were a member of such an advanced alien civilization, I wouldn't be consumed by yet looking to increase the energy production capacity by building yet another boring old Dyson sphere. I would probably look to nurture the younger civilizations. But by the laws of the verse, this is strictly not really the job of any Type 4 civilization. And by extension, neither can a Type 3, Type 2, or Type 1 civilization be allowed to help nor interfere in the natural evolution of another planet's ecology where another such civilization may come to rise. This is the universal prime directive that no civilization in the verse will cross, lest they incur the wrath of the real powers that existed long before the universe came into being. This job belongs to those coming from a Type 5 civilization.